This is not such a great thing for me, because in some ways, you know how you'd rather not know things than know things sometimes? I was introduced to some YouTube channels from some other channels that I watch, and one of them was Vaush, V-A-U-S-H, and he gave some interesting analysis. And by the way, anytime I mention any channel, any individual, any group, any organization, I'm not necessarily endorsing them, and I don't know what their future opinions are. I don't know what all their opinions are, and past and present and future. So when I mention any channel or any sort of individual, please keep that in mind. So I was watching Vaush, and he was talking about the likes of Pewdiepie. Now that's I find that a very sort of infantile name to start with, but there are channels that are literally sort of they're giving nods to Nazism, and they have a lot of literally Nazi followers. And Pewdiepie is a channel, I haven't mentioned them before because I don't really want people to check them out, really. But also, there's more important, sorry, there's a little cat rubbing himself against my tripod here. So the likes of Pewdiepie, he has like 100 million followers on YouTube. That's a very, very large audience, and he makes a few $1 million a month. When that terrorist who killed all those Muslims in New Zealand in about a year ago, he killed 50 Muslims, he massacred them, and he did a live stream of it while he was doing it. He actually, just before he got out of the car, he said, before he got out of the car to massacre these 50 Muslims, he said, subscribe to Pewdiepie. Now, you can't blame Pewdiepie for somebody who's just about to commit a terrorist act, sort of mentioning them. But I'm going to put a link to this Vaush, V-A-U-S-H, who talks about Pewdiepie a couple of times around that time, about a year ago, and you can see that he's done these nods and winks to Nazis for a while. And when Pewdiepie offered the Anti-Defamation League, and I'm not endorsing the Anti-Defamation League, they promote Zionism, as from what I understand. But when Pewdiepie made a $50,000 donation, who was going to make a $50,000 donation to the Anti-Defamation League, and then he changed his mind and withdrew that, he was wearing a Georgian cross on his pullover, and he was facing with the pullover toward the camera so that that was a real focal point. And the Georgian cross looks very much like the German Iron Cross that the Nazis used during World War II. And this is the sort of thing, this is what he's doing when he's talking about, his donation to the Anti-Defamation League, which is against anti-Semitism. He selects a shirt that has this Georgian cross, which looks very much like the German cross that the Nazis used. So, it's things like that. And also he's apparently made some anti-Semitic comments in his videos. He does these subtle nods and winks, and not so subtle, to Nazis, and that's something that happens regularly. But he will disavow, but he actually, you can see that happening. And there's a list of things that Vaush goes through of what he's done, that he said he didn't even know that the Georgian cross was sort of very similar to a Nazi symbol, and yet that was a lie, because he'd actually been doing some gaming on his channel, and he said, oh, I'll take that German tank, which had a big German cross on it, an iron cross on it. He knows exactly what that is, right? So anyway, there's a list of things that he's done that is a nod and a wink to Nazis, and Nazis actually talked him out of giving that $50,000 donation to the Anti-Defamation League, which is something he didn't really admit. And Nazis were actually very excited. These are literal Nazis too. Were very excited that he was wearing that Georgian cross, which looked like a German cross, on his. And they said he's just a fearless sort of leader. So he's sort of like a bit of a lightning rod, a sort of a lightning rod for Nazis on YouTube. And I don't use that word lightly, Nazis. I literally mean they subscribe to that ideology. It's not really about whether Pewdiepie is a Nazi or not. I'm not concerned about that. It's actually that he is normalizing that Nazism. Actually, a bit of a lightning rod for Nazis there, who helps embolden that particular movement and that sentiment. and that's very concerning. And that's the extreme form of what I'm going to talk about now. And there's numerous channels like that, and I'm not sure even why. I mean, Pewdiepie does it in a very sort of subtle ways, so that he can't really be deplatformed, and so that he continue on making his millions of dollars every month. And then there's now I'm going to the other sort of extreme, which is sort of a worry, is things like The Hill, which has got this program called Rising, RISING, with Krystal Ball and Saagar Engeti. Now, Saagar Engeti is he's a right-wing. He mixes leftist talking points and right-wing talking points. He mixes them up when he talks, but he also is trying to, this program with Krystal Ball, and Krystal Ball is assisting in this. I don't know if she's doing it unconsciously, but she's an intelligent woman, so I'm concerned that this is actually an attempt by The Hill, which has got all sorts of stuff on it, and it's kind of Rising is actually funded by a friend of Donald Trump's, from what I understand. So I don't know, when I see something from The Hill, I immediately become suspect. And what they're doing is they're scooping up all these disenfranchised and disillusioned Bernie Sanders supporters and allowing and putting across this message, whether subtle and not so subtle sometimes, that the right-wing populist movement and the left-wing populist movement they have a lot in common. And so they're sort of like we should all band together. We should be working with the right. Now, the right, their solution in the end, whether they have the same economic aims as the left, meaning basically that the US is an inverted totalitarian state, meaning they give fealty to democracy and all of this, but basically the US is governed by corporations. Well, the right and the left can recognize, there are people on the right that recognize that, and there are people on the left. They also recognize that there's a lot of corruption with the political system. But that's where it kind of, I'm being very general here, and I'm being very brief about this. But I'm sure I'm making mistakes, so please forgive me. I've only been introduced to this whole thing of American politics really for the last few years. I don't have a history of it. I only woke up to it, in 2013, really, with Abby Martin's Breaking the Set. So, I'm doing my best to talk about this, but I'm just expressing my concerns about this, really. I'm sure you can get better analysis about this from people like Vosh, and also from the usual people that I mentioned. But on the Rising, this is where they're conflating issues, and the solutions are very different. The right has a different solution to these problems that the left does. The right might want economic solutions that benefit white people, but they don't give a toss about people of color, black people, etc., or Muslims, whoever. So their solutions are very, very different and kind of fascistic, really, to what the left, even though we might share similar sorts of positions about, like corporations running the show, etc. The solutions, that there are commonalities in maybe recognizing problems, but that's probably where it ends. And so, this is where it gets very worrying. I find this worrisome, that The Hill is using Rising to this show Rising with Krystal Ball, and Krystal Ball is a very intelligent woman, and she'll make a lot of great points, but then she'll go and conflate, give a nod in some ways to things that are confusing and conflating issues, and also normalizing right-wing. I've got a little cat on my lap. It's Nandi with his Bird Be Safe collar. Basically, Krystal Ball is not challenging Saagar Engeti, the right-wing host, like she should be. She didn't do it when she was on Joe Rogan, really. She let him go on a rant, which really needed to be stopped short on various things that he was saying, but she didn't. Unfortunately, Saagar Engeti is a big fan, it seems, of oftentimes of Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson is something that the left seems to be holding up as some kind of, I don't know. It's sort of scary, because Tucker Carlson is a Fox News host who's incredibly Islamophobic, he promotes anti-Chinese propaganda regularly. He's misogynist. he is basically promoting fascism oftentimes, and he's anti-Black Lives Matter. And this Sagar Angeti, who is a host on The Rising, a co-host to Krystal Ball, who's the left person, he often nods to Tucker Carlson and sort of like congratulates him about, some of his positions. And some of his positions, Tucker Carlson's positions, at times, can call out corporations and criticize, of course, the Democratic Party. He's a Fox News host. And there's been talk that Tucker Carlson actually advises the president, goes to the White House and advises the president about President Trump about different things. And I've even seen some talking points from Tucker Carlson when he's not ranting about, when he's not doing xenophobic, racist, Islamophobic stuff, and when he's not sort of drumming up war against China. He'll sometimes make sense, but even a broken clock is right twice a day. It doesn't mean, though, that you can actually, it's anything that people should be using. I once posted something by Tucker Carlson on one of my Facebook groups, but I prefaced it with this Islamophobic, racist, xenophobic, warmongering Fox News host actually made sense in this video. But it wasn't like I was promoting Tucker Carlson, because you have to look at the whole everything. You have to look at all the positions he has. And unfortunately, Krystal Ball and her co-host Sagar Angeti are every so often will bring up Tucker Carlson as if, look, the right and the left, we have all these things in common. We should be working together. And this is something that different leftists seem to be mistakenly, or have in the past mistakenly embraced.
Is that Tucker Carlson's form of far-right populism is very much inspired by the blue Democrat, like pro-union working rhetoric, where Tucker Carlson will go on there and talk about how big corporations are fucking over workers and, they evade corporate responsibility while they profiteer off the suffering of the masses and what have you. Now that shit sounds really compelling to lefties, They'll be like, wow, Tucker Carlson, a Fox News host, is talking about corporate greed? Wowie! This is our opportunity. We should start to build a coalition with other worker-conscious people. Okay. The issue is, Tucker Carlson is basically a white nationalist. Again, I don't want to waste my fucking time going over logs here or anything, but this dude right now, as I'm speaking, right now, is on his show talking about how BLM is trying to start a race war and how this isn't about race, this is about attacking us and we need to defend ourselves. He defends like this race war rhetoric very frequently. He is 100% a white nationalist. He's probably one of the most openly white supremacist people on the entire platform, which is pretty impressive, all things considered. So the problem is, not only is Tucker Carlson a white nationalist, or at the very least espouses white nationalist rhetoric, but his populism is fake. He's a Murdoch baby, literally. They said that in a quote. Somebody said, "You're Murdoch's bitch," and Tucker was like, oh yeah, I would be honored to be caned by Mr. Murdoch. I do whatever he tells me to. Not exactly the language of a pro-worker populist there, is it? More a person who can profit off pro-worker populism. And while I expect that degree of mindless stupidity from the average fucking Fox News viewer, I would trust lefties a little bit more when it comes to literally propagating the fake populist sentiment of a far-right commentator who is only capitalizing on the populist interests of their audience. I would expect lefties to be a little fucking better about that. My concern, and this is something I've been seeing a lot lately, is that we're headed towards the Nazbowl vortex, that there are lefties who are growing more and more comfortable with class reductionism, who are more and more comfortable abandoning progressive social causes as long as it means pushing for the workers' interests. What this inherently means, what this inexorably, suggests, is that these people believe that class solidarity and racial solidarity are either mutually exclusive or more difficult to pursue at the same time. And I could not possibly disagree more. Holy shit, that is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. Are you fucking kidding me? Every single major black liberation movement in the United States, from Malcolm X to Martin Luther King to W.E.B. Du Bois, all of them were also socialists. The concerns of the black man and of the worker are one and the same. They live in a power system that suppresses them. They live under the rule of a group of autocrats who profit from their suffering. So the idea, when you look through this history, and my God, what Martin Luther King did for socialism, when he and the Black Panther Party, another socialist organization that fought for black rights, tried to coalition build, Fred Hampton said it best, We do not want to fight fire with fire. We do not want to fight white capitalism with black capitalism. We will fight white capitalism with socialism. The rhetoric, even of these extremist groups, and the Black Panther Party was an extremist group, and I say that with a great deal of love for those people, was race and class solidarity. And it was easy for them. You know why? Because their IQ was higher than fucking 30. But there has been this increasing wave of dipshit, white, class reductionist lefties who are now acting as though Black Lives Matter is racially divisive. I've seen a lot of people doing this, Do we really want to pursue these liberal identity divides and alienate people when we could be focusing on class? Gets my fucking blood boiling. First of all, BLM isn't a race war. There are white and black folk out there on the streets protesting. There are white and black folk hiding behind riot shields, okay? While that may be a racial divide that they are protesting, the fact of the matter is that white supremacy is promoted by black people and by white people. From black people in the ghettos who are complicit and black people who are in the fucking halls of Congress who are complicit. And there are white people who are sympathetic from the halls of Congress, and there are white people out there on the streets fighting the same causes, linking arms with their brothers. Great. It's not a fucking race war. And considering the fact that the vast majority of the people in this country are highly sympathetic to the cause of Black Lives Matter, and this is still a white majority country, I would believe perhaps that BLM is not alienating people who would otherwise be engaged with class solidarity. I want you to find me this gigantic group of people. Find me this demographic of whites who are uncomfortable with black liberation, who are uncomfortable. They think the blacks had it coming. The police violence is justified, 1350. But also, they're willing to link arm in arm and overthrow capitalism. Find me this great majority. I know there are some people on the internet who are very fond of this particular framework. These Nazbols, these literal neo-Nazis who literally want to form an ethno-state, but find me like this new untouched voter population,
There's very limited amount of commonalities maybe the right and left have, things that they recognize are wrong, but that's where it ends. The right is definitely fascistic, and they don't they don't care a toss about minority groups. In fact, there's been a consistent push against identity politics, and identity politics has been actually distorted by the Democratic Party and made out as a very superficial and weaponized representation. The reason ID politics exists is because certain groups have been vilified to the point that they've had to get together and organize. That's why these groups exist. Why they had to do that, because of oppression. So to vilify any group that is doing that, Black Lives Matter or any group, LGBTQ and all of that, is ridiculous. And yet the right has been doing that consistently, and even people that say they're on the left have been doing that. And I see that as very insidious and sinister. And I wish people would stop it. And I've called this out before on this channel. I think it's really kind of disgusting, I have to say, when I see people that say they're on the left, sort of bagging groups that are minority groups that are trying to organize, and using it and presenting it in the same way that, say, the Democratic Party does. The Democratic Party exploits ID politics. They don't care a toss about black people, really, or people of color in general, or minority groups. They don't care. They use it to make out that their party is a party of diversity. They use it to make out that their party is a party of diversity, and that it's different, and making out as if it's different from the Republican Party, when it's not. They're just one big war party with a right and a far right. So it's cynically used by the Democratic Party, and unfortunately some people on the left and a lot of people on the right actually use this weaponized ID politics to try and to normalize hate against those groups. That's unfortunately what's been happening, and I really, really, really find that very, very unfortunate, to say the least, particularly when I see people on the left doing that. And there's more and more of that, particularly this anti-trans sentiment, transphobia on the left. People have to snap out of that, truly, and get educated. And I've talked about that, and I've done some videos specifically about trans rights, and I invite you to check them out. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that shows like The Rising, and sometimes Jimmy Dore puts on people like Tim Pool. He didn't do enough investigation about Tim Pool, who is a grifter, and there are other grifters meaning people who are lurching to the right to get in more subscribers so they can make more money. There's even questionable things from Michael Tracy, sort of dumping on Black Lives Matter and that sort of thing, and questioning Tara Reid, who came forth about the alleged sexual abuse and sexual attack by Joe Biden. There are people sort of kind of grifting to the right, and that's really unfortunate, and it's not surprising in a society, particularly in the United States, where people are, if they make their career out of being on YouTube or whatever, they're going to, if they have any sort of moral murkiness, they're going to, try and draw in different people from, you can get a lot of money just from grifting to the right. The right will throw money at you if you are vilifying minority groups, or if you're giving a nod and a wink to Nazism and fascism, etc. They will throw money at you, and people like Jordan Peterson have probably realized that. There are people that are going around, sort of promote, kind of vilifying minority groups through, sort of trying to bag ID politics, weaponizing it, and also, misogyny, dumping on feminists. I've even criticized Joe Rogan for that. His site seems to be his channel, and now he's just been offered $100 million to go to Spotify, I think it is. His channel is a lightning rod for misogynists and the alt-right, and there's a reason for that. I often find leftists making excuses for Joe Rogan. Anytime he does if he says something stupid about China, if he promotes anti-Chinese propaganda, people are going, I don't understand why he's doing that. I do. I don't know why people give Joe Rogan a pass all the time. Seriously, I mean, I followed him for a while because I was told he was interesting, and then I see he's dumping on feminists, he's dumping on trans people repeatedly. His opinions change depending on who he's talking with. I see him as a major grifter. His opinions change depending on who he's talking with often. Sometimes they won't, and sometimes they do. So anyway, my neighbour's doing some stuff. I'm going to talk about this more, and but this is just sort of talking about my concerns about how the left is sort of, mentioning Tucker Carlson as if he's some sort of somebody that we should be looking to because he's happens to be talking sometimes about corporate corruption, or maybe he's criticizing politicians from both sides of the aisle. But he's an Islamophobic, racist, xenophobic, fascist-promoting Fox News host. And so we should not be looking to people like that as they're some sort of a, wowzer kind of a hero in some ways. There's just too many people looking to Tucker Carlson. And Robbie Martin has done some stuff about Tucker Carlson's father, who, that's a very interesting character. So you may want to check out Media Roots Radio. Media Roots Radio actually has done a whole thing about the anti-Chinese propaganda, and Tucker Carlson's been leading the charge there. So, I don't know. I could talk a lot more about some of the YouTube channels that are giving little nods and winks to fascists and not, like giving little nods and winks to Nazis, or basically trying to normalize misogyny to the, by dumping on feminists or dumping on women in general or whatever. There's a lot of trying to normalize fascistic types of things, and it's very sinister, and it can be very subtle, but over time you can bring your audience along with you by continually repeating these same sorts of talking points and distorting certain groups and what they represent. You can normalize fascism in a way, and that's what is very frightening, is that I feel like that is becoming more and more of a thing, and the right and trying to conflate two movements together because we might have a couple of commonalities, when one group, the right wing, is absolutely, they would like to see minority groups, black people, etc., LGBT people, Q people, they want to see them crushed, and they're totally behind white supremacy. That's their solution. So this conflation is very dangerous, and also trying to work with the right when that's their solutions. Their solutions are fascistic. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. So my name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. Please check out the videos at the end of this video, and click them on if you like the content here. And they probably have some commonalities with the content here, and it helps increase the presence of this channel on YouTube, because the algorithms are very heavy duty on any leftist channels, anybody that's promoting anti-imperialism and anti-war or anti-fascism even. The algorithms are not kind, particularly when you're talking about Palestine and that sort of thing. So thanks for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. Till next time. Bye for now.